So what about, let's tie in then, since we don't have any hands up, let's tie in then this, the whole, the Africana studies, or ethnic studies. Let's take it down to even into high school and elementary school and junior high, if they still have those in certain areas, they do.
Except in Arizona.
I was about to say, when we think about budgets and cuts, right, that one on the chopping block, there seems to be always the discussion of Africana studies or African American studies that you can do. We need to do away with this in our curriculum. Is that also brilliant in its setup?
We've had a Black Studies program at SIU since 1968. Mm-hmm. And I got there in 1997 with the game plan of having a major in it because it was only a minor. On the front page of the newspaper, the student newspaper, my third week there, the provost said, he's a man with a lot of intelligence and imagination, but it'll never happen. Mm-hmm. The senior black professional on the campus told me I was a damn fool for even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So I knew that the game was set up. So this past June, when we got our major in Africana Studies, no, don't thank me, thank me. Anyway, when that happened, I had to compromise every ounce of integrity because the dean told me, the academic vice president told me, the faculty senate told me, we will approve this if you do not ask for any resources.
Right.
And I said, okay, I just happen to be a Catholic Jesuit priest. We wrote the book on if you ask me to do something immoral, I'll say anything you want me to say and I'm still going to go do it. If you ask me to assent to an unethical act, you're the one who's responsible. And I'm planning on, you told me no, thank you. You told me no again, thank you again. Of course these are not going to have the resources. Because just what he said, we solve the problem. You don't liberate the black mind, you liberate the mind by giving people permission to be fully engaged in learning whatever they need to know. That's a challenge to the stultifying way education is processed on the higher educational campuses now, all the way down. Don't be controversial, don't be provocative, don't upset children. Well, now wait a minute. We saw the dogs. We saw the hoses. I'm an exact contemporary of the Little Rock Nine. I had to desegregate a school system when I was 12 years old in Wisconsin. Black children have never had the luxury that the white heroes and heroines have in Western literature of growing into adulthood, losing their innocence, and gaining experience. We start with experience and hope someday we can have 2 or 3 days of innocence. It's the reverse. Nobody wants me to tell them that. So I'm just going to keep on doing it. My daddy didn't have to have a degree or a school in order to teach me black studies. All you need is a church basement.
I want to pick up from the question you asked about black and white students.
Yeah.
And then I'll come to this question about...
Because it seems related to the whole freedom and liberation of both races. And
you know, students have different needs, and this is across race. But clearly, I think it would be fair to say that the average white student that enters into a Black Studies course, it's in that course that they will have their first experience with a black professor or with a black person being in charge of something, right? It's likely to be the first time that they've had an intimate experience with a black person, because usually it's on television or basketball, you know, but no personal interactions of any significant sort. So where I'm going is that for the white student, they're coming with a number of stereotypes about black folk. And so what Black Studies primarily does for white students, I think, is not just that it gives them some content, some information, but that information that they get serves the role of humanizing black people in their perspective. Because generally prior to that, at some level, black people weren't quite human. I mean, if you think about the images you see in the United States, U.S. media, black people don't appear as quite human, right? We appear as something else. And so I think that for white students, black studies humanizes. The other thing it does for white students is that it helps them begin to question the history that they've gotten up to that point, the experiences that they've been told, the stories, et cetera, et cetera. So it does that. For black students, most black students understand that black people are human beings, and they don't need to get that out of black studies. What they need to get out of black studies is that black people have been able to succeed in this society despite the way the system has been stacked. And so what they need is inspiration, right, that black people can overcome. So that's generally what they come looking for, is to feel good about being black and that they can in fact succeed. And I think what black studies ultimately gives students, and I'm basing this on what I hear from students 2-3 years later, right? Not what they say while they're in the class, because in the class they're mumbling. I hate that damn Joy. Got me reading all these books.
Oh,
but
I thought it was just me.
No. But 2 years later, I really appreciate what I got. All right. You're mature now. Okay. So what it does is it gives them a sense that they can change things, and that's what a sense of efficacy has to come out of black studies, that you can in fact make a difference. And that's why one of the things you see with students who come out of black studies, black and white, they get involved in trying to do things for people, right? These aren't the folks who say, I'm going to go on Wall Street and I'm going to create the derivatives and ruin the world economy and I'm going to snort coke. You know, that's not what students who take black studies do, or ethnic studies. They say, I want to go teach for America. I want to be a doctor and work in poor communities and charge reasonable rates. You know, so there's those elements. Now, in terms of this bigger question, I think that we have to be very, very clear that from the beginning, black studies came into the academy in ways that no other discipline would come in.
Amen.
It was created by students. And those things that followed, Latino studies, women's studies, right, they were part of that thrust. So these are things that are generated by students, and they're part of broader social movements. If you don't have a civil rights black power movement, you don't get black studies. You don't have a Latino power movement, you don't get Latino studies. If you don't have the women's movement, you don't get women's studies. So these things come from social movements that are broader than just academia. So they were never really embraced by academia.
Nope.
They were tolerated. Okay? So here's the deal. Chancellor at the University of Illinois 5 years ago told me and people, the heads of Latino studies, women's studies, that collectively we made up less than 1% of the budget, less than 1% of his budget. Okay, you can go anywhere in America and you will find that the Black Studies program has somewhere between $16,000 and $30,000 of disposable income after salaries. Right? Now, the power in a university is in a department. Departments have the power to put you up for tenure. Departments are the basic organizing mechanism in a university system. There's over 330 Black Studies units in American colleges and universities. Only 100 are departments. The PhD is the prime degree, right? Now, I'll make some people mad. I'm talking the PhD, the intellectual degree. I'm not talking law, medicine, or what I call body carpentry. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the intellectual aspect of the agenda. Okay? That's the PhD. There are only 11 colleges that give the PhD in black studies. There's only 31 that give the master's degree. Okay? Now, so what that tells us is that even though the discipline is 40 years old in its formal sense, right? But we can trace it back to people writing in the 1870s, studying the black experience from the standpoint of black people. So that tells us that it's a devalued, right? Grossly devalued. And in this era, at the University of Illinois, since 2003, we've had rescissions. Every year we've had to give back 2%, 1%, 3%, 4%, right? And you're talking about, as I said, a disposable budget of 16 to 30,000. Okay? And so clearly these units are ripe for being targeted in the context of an overall budget crisis, because they've never invested, and now they have a great opportunity to de-invest. They will not eliminate.
No.
They can't eliminate, but what they can do is reconfigure. So at Seton Hall University, they took geography, philosophy, Latino studies, African American studies, and something. They took essentially a grab bag of small departments and threw them all together into a new department. At Columbia University, they took the Institute of African American Studies, they combined it with the Institute for Latino Studies, they combined it with the Center for the Study of Women, and the Center for the Study of Sexuality, and they created a new thing. I don't even know what this thing is. I can't even get my mind around it. It's called the Center for the Study of Critical Difference. I said, well, shit, that's better than the study of insignificant difference. But what is that? It's an amorphous hodgepodge, right? And that's where they want to go. And this is the problem that we gotta work out. While we are for multiculturalism, we are for building alliances with women's studies, Latino studies, Asian American studies. These are the people that we have the most in common with, and we want to build alliances. But to act and treat us as if we have the same historical experiences, that we have the same perspectives, that we occupy the same location in this society is an absurdity. And it's disrespectful, profoundly disrespectful. So we have to find a way to continue to articulate and talk about what makes us different in terms of lived experiences, and yet find a common political agenda that we can organize around to prevent our further marginalization in the academy.